no regrets, no confusion. There'll be no pollution. I'm so thankful I've decided to change my ways.
Welcome back to the Leaving Eden podcast. My name is Gavriel Hakohen.
And I'm cult expert Sadie Carpenter.
Cult expert and cult survivor Sadie Carpenter. Sadie, do you want to introduce the fine people to what we're talking about today?
Absolutely. So today we are talking about one of the most notorious fundies of them all, the transformed wife, aka Lori Alexander, or as the Snarkers know her, Aunt Lori. The content that she puts out displays a level of internalized misogyny and purity culture and hatred that is really hard to parallel even among fundies. Because of that, we have invited the amazing Jen from the YouTube channel Fundie Fridays to bring the extra snark and the extra feminist back up to today's episode, and Jen will be joining us in just a moment.
I am so excited for this. As we all know, Jen is the leader of the Fundie snarking movement.
The leader of the Fundie snarking movement.
Yeah, the number one Fundie snarker on earth. But before we get into that, the Leaving Eden podcast is the podcast about my BFF and co-host Sadie Carpenter's life in and escape from the independent fundamental Baptist cult, the cult in which she was raised. We talk about this cult. We talk about other cults. We talk about religion, fundamentalism, and the real and present threat that cults and cult ideologies pose to society as a whole. And it is our goal to promote freedom of mind, freedom of thought, and freedom of religion. So if you like our show, if you're a fan of our show, then I would love it if you would consider supporting us on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Leaving Eden podcast. As you know, we upload to our Patreon extended and uncensored versions of most of our episodes. So I know that there's about to be a couple of times when our conversation with Jen goes completely off the rails. And if you want to hear that, subscribe to our Patreon to get all of the funny outtakes. You can join our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Eden Exodus. You can join our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/Eden Exodus. If you just hit that like, hit that follow, hit that subscribe button on wherever you get your podcasts, you will get our new episodes every Monday. Plus, I would also recommend, if this is your first time listening to our show, you can go back and check out episode 57, which is a primer episode for new listeners. We also have in-depth overviews of the Duggars, Bill Gothard and the IBLP. We have episodes about Welcome to Plathville. We have episodes about Girl Defined. We have episodes about Paul and Morgan. You know, if you love Fundie snarking, we've got those episodes for you. We've also got episodes about the theological concepts as well. Maybe consider also checking out our recent review of Ginger Duggar's book, Becoming Free Indeed. Sadie, is there anything else I need to say before I get into thanking the patrons?
No, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. I'll give us a quick trigger warning and we will jump into this awesome chat that we had with Jen.
Yeah, I'm so excited for it. So we have two I Gave It All tier patrons. Your names are Kathleen Moncrief and Melissa Mosley. Thank you guys so much for being amazing. We truly do love you. Yes, we do. You guys are fantastic and we love you so much. We have many Faith Promise Missions tier patrons, and we love our Faith Promise Missions tier patrons as well. Faith Promise Missions tier patrons, your names are Alex Todd, Alicia Guild, Ali Allen, Anisha Patel, Brittany, Brooke Tully, Chrissa, Crystal Patterson, Dear Ethan Hansen the Musical, Eleanor Donahue, Emery Fairlosser, Hannah Ross, Hope Norum, Horton Hears a Shane. I'm just here to send Sadie true crime podcast suggestions, aka Meg. Janine Callan, Jen Kaharski, Jessica Tambo, Jonna K. Turwee, Kristen Marie, Lauren Vanderwall, Linda Morgan, Lindsay Goss, Lorena Watson, MC Crunchwrap, hashtag the boy who cried sauce, Michaela Upright, Madeline Antrim, Madeline Cusick, Marlena Stuve, Mary Williams, Mary Martin, Megan Arendt, Rob the Methodist, Sarah Reese, Scooby Sleuth, Stephanie Johnson, Susie, Tara McNamara, The Lady Rabbi, Tiffany Enderby, Walnut, Son of Walnut, and as always, to round out our Faith Promise Missions tier patrons, Wes the Cowboy. Thank you so much, Wes the Cowboy.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of our patrons over on Patreon. A special thank you to the I Gave It All in Faith Promise Missions tiers, but to all of you, we appreciate you so much.
And also to all of the people who've just told their friends and their family and everyone that they know about this show, because that's the biggest way that we grow our audience is from you. And so we do love you. Yes, we do.
We don't love anyone as much as you. Oh no, I just triggered all the the former IFBs among us.
Listen to our 5-part series, First Family of Fundamentalism, to understand that joke. Sadie, do you want to hit us with a trigger warning, and then we will get into our Fundie snarking with Jen?
Absolutely. In general, we talk about a lot of potentially triggering topics on this show, including but not limited to mental health, suicide, racism, misogyny, PTSD symptoms, child abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse, and spiritual abuse, including guilt, shame, and fear. In most episodes, we'll mention at least a few of these topics, but we try to avoid any graphic detail at all, any further description of these topics, unless it's relevant to the story that we're telling. And we will give you a heads up before we go into detail on any of these topics or anything else that we know could potentially be triggering to someone. In this episode, trigger warning for all of the misogyny. This episode is discussing misogyny from the beginning to the end. We will also be talking briefly about physical child abuse, people spanking their children. We will also have an extended discussion of marital rape, but we won't go into a lot of detail on that at all.
Yikes. Ugh. Yeah.
And this is why Jen is here, because Jen is going to help us get through all of these topics with grace and a lot of humor. I'm sure that a large portion of our audience is already more than familiar with our guest for this episode. They are the host of the amazing, fantastic YouTube channel Fundie Fridays, and they also cover famous fundies with delightful wit and sarcasm. Jen is here with us today to bring the feminist backup as we cover someone who I consider to be one of the big bads when it comes to internet fundies. Hello, Jen. Welcome to Leaving Eden.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so
excited
glad
to be
you're
here.
with us.
As we all know, Jen is the leader of the Fundie snarking movement.
I'm the anti-hero. Oh, and I wanted to say, okay, so my wisdom tooth surgery ended up not being long enough to have to listen to 2 podcasts, but you were my second right after Trixie and Katya's podcast that I was going to listen to as I was
Well, thank
drilled
you so
into.
much.
Wow.
I had it lined
That's
up and
incredible.
everything. I made a playlist called Tooth Hurdy. It was on there.
I had a friend text me today that she was listening to Leaving Eden while getting a tattoo.
Oh,
I love it. Is
So-
is this friend a deconstructorino, or is this friend just like a normie like me?
She's a deconstructorino from like a slightly different sphere of life.
Deconstructorino listening to Leaving Eden podcast while getting a tattoo. You love to see it.
I didn't start out like at all, like even concerning myself with deconstruction when I started my channel. But now that like a large portion of my audience is like that, like I feel very protective of them. Like they're like my babies.
How did you get into fundies? Do you have like a stump speech for this?
I do, but it's like underwhelming. So I was not raised religious and I was an only child. So I was just obsessed with the Duggars, anything on TLC. And so that kind of started that process. And I was like kind of lightly following them. And then when I used to work overnights at the nursing home, that was my job for a long time, I started going on Free Ginger. And then I was on Free Ginger like just casually. And then the first set of Josh scandals came out and I literally watched the world like explode. Like from behind the scenes.
It's so fascinating. And I love getting to have an audience for our show that's like half and half, people who are deconstructing and people like you.
Yeah, I'm like the anthropologist.
Yes, it is absolutely of anthropological interest. So, Jen, let's talk about the transformed wife.
Have you talked about her at all?
We have. I don't know if we've even mentioned her.
We might have
the
mentioned
pearls.
her.
Have you talked about the pearls?
Yes, we have not done a full episode on them yet, but we have kind of explained who they are.
They're kind of like one and the same. She's like the hype man.
Yeah. Would you grace us with your little introduction of Lori Alexander?
Lori Ann Alexander was born September 1st, 1958. She lives, my notes say, she lives in California and she's a miserable old bag who hates life.
That was perfect.
Yeah,
oh
she
God.
she literally is like, let's see if she was born 58. Yeah, she is a boomer. She kind of represents everybody's, I wouldn't say everybody, because some people don't have terrible family members, but she's like everybody's like inappropriate, bigoted boomer family member who you just kind of put up with her at Christmas because this might be her last one, you know. But she just says like the most horrible stuff, and she is a huge advocate for child abuse. She loves child abuse, and she regularly gives horrible, dangerous advice to women. Especially, she seems to be fixated on how once you get married, just consent goes out the window, because she is really fixated on that.
Lori has an opinion on everything, and unlike some of the fundies we've discussed, they are all bad.
Yeah.
I think something I do a lot is I want to give credit where credit is due. You know, when fundies have 99 terrible opinions and then like one good one, because I feel like that's fair, but Lori's opinions are so bad. I want to talk about kind of how she got to where she is, and maybe do like a history of her journey.
Well, so apparently, according to her, she was this horrible, mean wife who would withhold sex to her husband. And then she was a Christian the whole time, so I don't know at what point her transformation occurred. Maybe it was just like, she just said that it occurred, but she transformed and now she is submissive and does anything she can to, help her marriage. I know that allegedly she was cheated on by Ken. Ken's her husband. Yeah. See, I'm getting all over the place.
So what I found, Lori was raised Christian, but her upbringing was tainted by the horrible monster of feminism, which led her to have expectations of her husband. One really interesting thing that I found.
Oh, no.
She expected him to be an adult human person, which is clearly incorrect. So one thing that I found that was interesting is that Ken was originally planning on being a pastor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm really glad that he went another direction, because knowing Fundie pastors' wives and how much they set the tone for every woman in the congregation, she would have really made some poor, unsuspecting people entirely miserable.
Let me say something about that. Ken lacks the charisma. He could never do it. Because I'll tell you this, Lori is an evil person, but she is that bitch. Like, yeah. She is the icon of bigoted housewives. And she's got that X factor.
I mean, you're pulling no punches here. No, the interesting thing to me about Lori Alexander is, aka the transformed wife, I guess, is that she's the one famous Fundie or Fundie influencer or whatever that I've seen that's actually managed to see her like tweets and her social media posts reach outside of the Fundie sphere.
She's famous.
Yeah, because like you go on Facebook or whatever, and you'll see like somebody sharing a Lori Alexander tweet, and it'll be like, "This is the version that this is the future that the right wing wants for us." But like, you do see her saying just the wildest stuff, and it'll pop up just outside of the Fundie sphere and the Fundie snarking sphere.
Yeah, her the tattooed, what is it? Debt-free virgins without tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain way to say it. But yeah, I've seen that on a lot of different things. Obviously, there's that famous picture of Riley Reid, the porn star, with that quote attributed to her, and then Lori retweeted it.
This is so
If you didn't know, you should look it up.
Oh my God.
This is so related to what we were talking about last week, though, with the rage baiting in the manosphere. Like, somebody posts a super controversial take, and the goal of that post is not really to get people to agree with them. The goal is to get people mad enough to quote tweet it and talk about it and make response videos. Now, I don't necessarily believe that Lori is internet savvy enough to have done that on purpose. I am just not convinced that this woman understands how big the internet is. But so I tend to think that she accidentally stumbled into this very viable content creation method.
I think Lori Alexander is like, because she's actually crazy enough to think all of the things that she says on the internet.
Yes.
That's the other piece of the puzzle that makes her so darkly fascinating.
Yeah, and you know, like, I mean, we know, like, Paul and Morgan are clickbait fiends. They love that stuff, but they kind of look at. I can imagine if you were like a Lori, if you're like a Paul and Morgan, or you were like a girl-defined Bethany Beal type person, you could look at Lori Alexander and say, you know, she gets a lot of engagement. Should we copy that style? But of course, they could never like go as far as the miserable, like, hateful, vile stuff that she says.
The thing
sorry.
Go ahead, Jen.
She reminds me of Trump, where if what she's saying wasn't like indicative of like actual problems, it would be hilarious.
Yes.
Because yeah, you're right. Girl defined, Paul and Morgan, they could never come up with anything as simple as the insane shit she says.
The problem for me is that I don't know about Paul and Morgan, but I believe in my heart that Girl Defined agrees with most of what Lori has to say. They're just presenting it in a much more palatable manner.
Yeah, they're like neutral aesthetic Lori Alexander.
Because these modern fundies, especially these like influencer ones, they want to have it all, right? Like, they want to be submissive and be anti-feminist, but they still want to have jobs and have, you know, autonomy and be girl bosses. Lori, I think she's even said, like, if they outlawed voting for women, she would be fine with it.
Oh yeah,
like, she's like talk ready about to do that. She's ready for it.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that's really interesting to me about all of these fundies is that it seems like, because this is the other thing. I'm sure that you saw that. You know how Paul and Morgan are like, oh, we're doing music now because the Grammys are so sinful. Mm-hmm. It's always odd to me how they're like, at the same time, they're just like, mainstream culture is evil, but at the same time, they're like constantly seeking the approval of mainstream culture.
Yes.
Whereas Lori Alexander is just like, mainstream culture, I hate all of you.
Yep.
You all are going to burn in hell, and I'm just going to say shit to make you mad all the time, and I'm going to you're going to hell and you deserve it, and I fucking hate you. Like, that's her.
Well, like,
that's
Carissa
her brand.
Collins. I'm fairly sure that Carissa Collins has reposted Transformed Wife tweets and content at some point on her Instagram stories, but Transformed Wife would absolutely go after Carissa for the music that she uses as the background for her little dancing videos.
She went after Ginger.
Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to talk about her going after Ginger.
She's involved herself in like every person in the Fundie cinematic universe. Like, she involved herself is the perfect way to put that. I want to back up and talk about a little more background of who this person is, just in case we have anybody who's you mean there's people that don't know?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I wasn't familiar with her until like Sadie was like, you need to look up who Lori Alexander is. And then I like look up the tweets and I'm like, oh, I've seen this. I've seen this.
So Lori had like, she had a Christian values. She was raised Christian. Her parents insisted that she go to college. She didn't want to. She went to college to be a teacher. She hated it. She met her husband, Ken, and they got married pretty young, but not like Fundie young. They got married at 22, 23. And Lori was still continuing as a teacher while being married to Ken, and they had their first child. We're going to get pretty deep into Lori's issues with the concept of consent. This was a pattern that started really early. She sabotaged her birth control in order to get pregnant with a second child because Ken said, well, when you have 2 kids, daycare won't be worth it anymore. So then you can quit your job and be a stay-at-home parent. And that's what she really wanted to do. So she sabotaged her birth control. Which seems like a very normal and healthy thing to do in a relationship rather than having a talk with your partner.
I think, that is pretty obvious, but that's assault. Like,
yes,
that is not okay. And I'm sure he would have been fine with having more children. She didn't need to do that anyway.
Yeah. And like, partners disagree about the number and timing of children. Healthy partners disagree about the number and timing of children all the time. And healthy partners find a way to compromise and work through that.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
So she just she just made that decision and said, "This is that's wild." That
she didn't.
Everything that she's saying now about women decision making. Meanwhile, she's sabotaging her own birth control.
I mean, this was before her transformation, so that's Jesus fixed it.
But she probably would. I don't know what she said about that. There's like a video about everything, but I'm sure she would have said, that was wrong to lie to my husband, but at least I got a baby, which is God's plan.
Right.
Like she would have said the means justify the ends.
She became a stay-at-home parent to her, at the time, 2 children, and I think now she has 4.
Oh, sorry, I want to interrupt.
Yes, go ahead.
There's a bunch of inconsistencies because she's a liar / because she had a nanny. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to bring it up that she says she was a stay-at-home, which I guess, sorry, if that sounds up, take it out. I'm trying to say she could have very well been a stay-at-home parent and had the help of a nanny, but she is so on her platform about anti having anybody else raise your kids and anti-working. So
yes. So I mean, it is really hard to be a parent and go to work and then pick up your kid from daycare and then go home and try to be present with your kid and be a good parent in that reduced time. And there are people who work really hard to do a good job of that. It is really hard to be a stay-at-home parent or a full-time parent in the house, taking care of your kid with very little help or no help. That is also very difficult. I am a full-time parent and also have a business, and that is difficult. I don't shame anybody for getting childcare help however they need it to accomplish their goals in their life, because parents are fully formed human people who are adding raising a child to the rest of what makes them themselves. However, Lori is all about, women are made for child rearing. You can do it all by yourself and you can be a stay-at-home mom and just depend on God. And then she went out and got a nanny because she couldn't do it all by herself, or apparently wasn't depending on God enough. The hypocrisy is the issue.
She's not frogging, man. She's got to frog harder.
Oh, man. So, okay. So speaking of people being expected to be fully formed humans, Lori says that in the 23 unhappy years at the beginning of their marriage, she feels that she was expecting Ken to be perfect. How she defines that is that she expected Ken to be an equal partner. So what she thought would be a good idea would be if she kept the house and cared for the kids during the day, while Ken went to work at a job to earn money to support the family. And then when Ken was off work, they would both collaborate on house care and child care for the remainder of the day.
That's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, she also wanted him to generally clean up his own messes, not leave dirty dishes in the living room or newspapers all over the floor. And she was mad at him because he would sit around watching TV while she was scrambling to get all of the house care done. That is her definition of expecting perfection. And she says it was a waste of time.
Man, she has...
What? Who is this transformation benefiting? Well, Ken, I guess.
Ken, clearly.
What? That sounds like you should have yelled at him more.
Yeah, and so
Lori.
they had constant conflict in in their marriage because he was perfectly happy sitting around watching TV and having like a live-in full-time servant. That is so frustrating to me that her bar for perfection. And one of the things that she mentioned was newspapers thrown around on the floor, and I want to know who reads the newspaper like that.
Well, I was going to say that's an old person thing to complain about.
This was something that I read about. Apparently, Ked said on a podcast that one point he asked her what everything that he'd ever done wrong was, and she told him everything that he'd ever done wrong, and it took her like 3 days.
Dude.
So I don't know, Jen, I don't know if you're a Simpsons person, but there's a Simpsons episode where Homer and Marge go to a marriage retreat sponsored by their church. And one of the activities that their pastor has them do is he has Marge list out all of the things that frustrate her about Homer. And there's this scene cut. Like, she starts off and she rambles on for a bit, and then the scene cuts to like 3 hours later, and her voice is all hoarse, and she's, well, I guess that's about all I can think of right now. And that is exactly what I imagined from this podcast appearance that Ken made.
This must be a real thing then, if it's being joked about on The Simpsons and Lori did it.
I mean, Lori's about the same age as Homer and Marge were when The Simpsons started.
I wonder if he was watching The Simpsons on the TV all day.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, my husband watches The Simpsons on the TV all day, but he also is a really big clean freak, so he does a lot of housework while he watches The Simpsons, which is fine.
This is sad.
Yeah.
It is. I think I have a whole like conspiracy theory about this.
What?
Do tell.
So, okay, the whole thing in patriarchy and complementarianism is that there are women's activities and men's activities, and corresponding areas in which the quote-unquote opposite gender is supposed to be completely helpless. So I did hear teaching growing up in the IFB like, well, a man should know how to make a basic dinner, women should know how to change a tire, just in case your partner gets terribly injured or something and can't help you. Like Jill Rodriguez's sister, Amy, who became paralyzed in an accident, I'm sure her husband cooks for their children, or did until their oldest daughter was grown up enough to be the next mom. What if this setup is meant to foster codependence and keep both members of a couple in the cult, as long as just one of them wants to stay in the cult? So we talked about this. Go ahead.
Like, that's so smart. You're going to have the feds at your door. Like, you just cracked the code.
I mean, is that like is something that they don't explicitly say? I just assumed that was true.
So thinking back to the Jonestown episode, John Stone, the little boy who Jim Jones claimed he was the father of, John Stone's father, Timothy, was headed towards leaving the People's Temple. He was like ready to get out, one foot out the door, when the kid was born. Grace, John's mother, was more committed to the People's Temple at the time. So Jim Jones coerced Timothy and Grace Stone into listing himself as the father on the birth certificate so that he would have legal rights to their child. And that made Timothy Stone stay in the People's Temple for like 6 more years. Later on, Grace left the People's Temple, but then Timothy had to stay because he needed to have legal rights. He didn't have any legal rights to his own son, and he wanted to watch out for his son. So take that concept. I've also talked about how my lack of education made it much more difficult for me to make my own life after leaving the IFB.
Yeah.
So in IFB, or biblical patriarchy, or strict complementarianism, the wife has no job history. Ideally, she never went to college at all or had a job, quote, out in the world. She has no resume beyond years of grueling domestic labor. On the other hand, the husband has no idea how to maintain a home, cook for himself, do his own laundry, sew on his own buttons. So they need each other. The wife might think, if I leave the church, he will leave me, and I cannot support myself. I have no job skills. The husband might be thinking, if I leave the church, she might leave me. And how can I manage both a job and a household when I have no idea how to do things around the house?
Well, even compare this to when we were talking a few weeks ago during our episode on the IFB marriage book on Patreon, our Patreon special episode about that IFB marriage and sex advice book, with the sex tip that was dress me up in my PJs. Like,
oh God, R.I.P. Freud, you would have loved that.
Yeah, it was literally like, have your husband bring you fresh PJs and put them on you. Like, the sheer helplessness of grown adults in fundamentalism is like the fetishization of that is truly baffling to me. As well as like their insistence on claiming that is a virtue.
And of course, there's also all the emphasis on childlike faith, having the faith of a child.
No, it's interesting because when we were talking about like food, even I remember I don't know if this actually made it into the episode, but when we were doing our food episode a couple months ago, you were talking to me about how there are certain food cooking things that it is acceptable for a man to do. So if there is a grill involved, then it's okay for a man to do that. But if it's like a stove or if it's like an oven, absolutely not.
Yeah, how stupid is that? That literally, like, because of this patriarchy, this idea that we made up, like, there are gendered meats. Like, stupid.
Well, obviously, you have to have the hot dog for men. And,
of course.
Yeah.
Right. But it fosters codependency. And what I've seen from a lot of years of looking at and dealing with people who are deconstructing, if a person is married, you almost always see them deconstruct with their spouse.
Yeah, probably. Otherwise they would break up, right?
Right, because otherwise they would break up. And also they have been groomed into codependency, like a very physical, temporal, real world codependency.
I want to say one nice thing about like leaving a religion together is that's like, it's probably really nice.
Yeah.
I don't know when you deconstructed or what your story is, but I can imagine that it would mean so much more. And it's also like, I don't know, you grow together as a couple in a way that you never could. Like, I don't know.
So from people that I know who have gone through this, it's a very shaky time. It can be an incredible bonding experience. Sometimes people will deconstruct as a couple, and then one of them will like want to be a Southern Baptist, and the other one's like, nope, I'm an atheist now. And then all of a sudden, you're in a mixed faith marriage that you never expected to be in. And a lot of people make that work incredibly successfully, and a lot of people just can't make that work.
I mean, and a lot of people, they'll get out and they'll realize, oh, I am not compatible with this person at all.
Yeah, like, oh, I married this person because I was supposed to. Oh,
yeah.
So there's a spectrum of experiences, but as far as the initial steps out of this kind of religion, you most often see couples. If someone is married, you most often see them do it together. So, Lori had these unrealistic expectations of her husband to not literally throw trash on the floor.
Unrealistic to who?
I mean, I live in Philadelphia. People throw trash on the ground all the time. It's a huge problem.
Maybe Ken's there.
Like,
So Lori had these extremely unreasonable expectations, and this is where Michael and Debbie Pearl come in. Unfortunately for Lori and for all of the internet, she found the book created to be his helpmeet, which is the Anti-Feminist Manifesto by Debbie Pearl. And she suddenly realized that the problem in her marriage was not that her husband was a misogynistic slob. The problem was that she just wasn't working hard enough. So she went to her husband and apologized and poured her heart out to him and apologized for being such a terrible, nagging wife and expecting him to be a functional human being. And now they have a perfect marriage.
Man, I tell you, I read so many like anti-feminist manifestos for the episode we did last week. Well, with the manosphere, with the incels, The difference is that Debbie Pearl's manifesto is that it didn't end in a mass shooting.
No, just a mass crippling of a generation of women emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Yeah, you're right. It's like kind of more outward with incels, like they want to affect the real world, and then a lot of these like submission-based anti-feminists, like the Christian ones, it's very like, it's a you problem, individual woman. You need to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
So, I know that Lori, she has had a non-cancerous brain tumor for a while. What I did not know until researching this episode is that the year she was initially diagnosed with this brain tumor was also the year that she had her transformation and became the transformed wife, which I would just like to state for the record is the worst superhero origin story ever.
Supervillain.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like Magneto.
I didn't know
like,
that it was the same year. That does
Track.
You want to, because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt and be like, you made these choices on your own. But I'm also like, man, you introduce anything to the brain and it really can change you.
Well, you know what it's like for me? You know how for the longest amount of time, Kanye West was saying and doing like the most wildest and people were just like, it's fine, he's bipolar. And
yeah, which is kind of ableist.
Yeah. It is kind of ableist because I know plenty of bipolar people who don't do any of that that he does. But like, you just be like, okay, look, he has a mental illness. And he's in a crazy place in his life in that he's always the center of attention wherever he goes. Maybe that's not the best for him. Maybe he just reacts in weird ways to stuff. And then it just keeps going and going. You're just like, I got to defend this now.
Yeah, well, being bipolar doesn't mean that it makes you anti-Semitic. Like that was a choice that he, that was his choice to do that.
Unlike slavery, anti-Semitism is a choice.
Oh, man. See, the thing about Lori,
he said it.
I would usually be so slow to want to make fun of like some lady with a brain tumor. That seems mean-spirited. The thing is that she continues to lean into it. It's not just beliefs I don't like. It's beliefs that hurt people and encourage other people to hurt people. And that's, I feel like I say that over and over again, and maybe I repeat myself too much, but that's the line.
Well, like these women, like and young women too, probably, they look up to her and they literally take what she says as is like this profound advice. And I can't imagine how they feel when she tells them that, you know, you need to let your husband assault you. Like they're taking that personally and they're thinking like, what's wrong with me? How am I displeasing God? I'm a bad wife. When in reality, like Lori told you the most like painful, horrible stuff. I'm getting frustrated. I just don't like her.
No, I mean, we can talk about that because I had that experience. I was raised being told that from the time I was a little girl, that was what marriage was. So I don't know if you want to dig into that, but I feel open to that if you want to.
If you're comfortable.
Don't talk about it.
I'm good. If I say anything I don't want to say, God will cut it. But that's, I think a lot of it is being groomed into this. I know that's a really charged word right now, but I don't know of a better term to use. And if someone has a better term, please let me know.
I mean, that's what it means.
That's what it actually means. That's not like how they co-opted it.
So I was hearing these teachings about there being no consent in marriage or no need for consent in marriage. I was hearing them in a veiled way that was meant to kind of go over kids' heads and be understood by adults from the time I was a kindergartner. And I was hearing it very specifically and blatantly from the time I was a preteen, because preteen girls started marriage training, which absolutely sounds like something out of The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
But thank you. But this is just it was the fabric of my life. It was, this is what you will do for your husband one day. You will not always want to be physically intimate with him, but he wants it. He needs it every 48 to 72 hours or he will explode. And if you don't give it to him, he will go after some other woman and it will be your fault. So that was, you learn facts as a child. Someone tells you that 2 + 2 is 4.
And when adults tell you things, of course you're going to believe them. Like, they are the source of your reality. So, yeah.
So I don't even, it's not even particularly traumatic for me to talk about it any more than, for you to talk about when someone told you that 2 + 2 is 4, how to spell the word vacuum, This was just what I thought marriage was. And I've said this so many times, but I think this is one of the most powerful insights from my experience growing up. I learned that sex is something that a man does to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was normal to me. This was just what you have to do when you grow up and get married. So I think that when these young women are following Lori and accepting what she says, they are not looking for advice on, is this something I have to do? Is having sex with my husband when I do not want to, or what we would say in the real world, when I do not consent, is this something I have to do? That's not the question they're asking, because it has always been something that they had to do. That has been always in their minds. The question that they are asking is, how do I mentally handle this thing that I must do? This thing that I have to do because I am married.
That just blew my mind.
I'm sorry.
I see that kind of stuff. I see Girl Defined doing that same kind of thing. Like, there's already this pre-established fact, on how they were raised and what they believe about it, and then they're backing it up. And a lot of times, Lori does an awful job at it, but like Girl Defined, they try to take these ideals and they make them sound like, they try to make them sound good. They don't. Mm-hmm. But like, they'll be like, it's okay to not be attracted to your spouse. It's okay if you never have an orgasm. It's okay if this, and that, because God, or whatever their reason is. And they have they're more hip with the young people about it than Lori is. So that just kind of blew my mind, because it is just kind of like trying to back it up. And
they're not looking for like, is this really something I have to do? Because that's not a question to them, because this has been in their minds as long as they've been alive, practically. The question that they're asking is, how do I get through it? Of course, Lori doesn't give particularly good advice, because she compared having sex with your husband to a gross chore that you don't want to do, like cleaning the toilet.
With Ken, it might have been.
What?
To be fair.
Wait, so she publicly compared sex with her husband to cleaning the toilet?
Mm-hmm. Jen, can you back me up? I feel like Gavi does not believe me.
I'll paraphrase, but she was like, oh, you don't want to have sex with your husband? What was it? She was like, do you not clean the toilet when you need to clean it? Okay. Does your husband not have to go to work when he doesn't feel like it?
Is the cleaning the toilet thing, is that public confirmation that Lori Alexander eats ass?
I don't think she does.
I will say she said that having sex with your husband when you don't feel like it is like your husband going to work when he doesn't feel like it. So is Lori Alexander saying that sex work is work, is what I want to know.
I think she is.
Surprisingly woke take from
Lori Alexander is going to be at a pride parade.
She's not a swerf. We dig it. The thing that I do remember, do you remember the Paul and Morgan video? One of the ones that we actually reviewed a couple weeks ago for Valentine's Day, when we had Liat on, that same episode. One of the things that, when they were like the popular sex advice that we reject, that video that they made.
Yes.
One of the questions that they responded to was one of the takes that they responded to was, you do not owe sex to anybody. And Morgan's response to this was, she said, if you're not a Christian, you don't understand what it means to love selflessly, which was basically her saying that if you put yourself in front of your husband's sexual desires, then you don't love him selflessly enough, which is a crazy thing to say. The implications of that are truly insane, but I feel like she only really said it, but then she kind of like walked it back a little bit, where I feel like she saw the wording of that take as woke and she had to reject it even if she didn't actually disagree with it. So
I just came up with an idea of an episode for you guys.
Oh, tell me
you
what
tell
it is.
us.
Okay, so the like accidentally being woke and them getting mad about it reminds me of all the fundies who are mad about the He Gets Us campaign,
Oh,
which
Yes.
man.
is funded by Hobby Lobby. And then I've also seen like deconstructioners and like progressive Christians talk about it too. And it's interesting to hear all of the takes at once. But I think you all would be good at it, especially Sadie, because you actually understand the like Bible verses they're referencing.
I would absolutely love to do an episode on the He Gets Us ads. Actually, we should pencil that in for the next month. 'Cause
Okay, I
We've got
think
a
we have a
couple.
flex
I have
space.
a
We've got a
plethora of
couple of
ideas.
open slots, man. Send us anything that you think that we should do, and we'll consider it, man. We have like, oof, man.
So, okay, so what you were talking about with Paul and Morgan and Lori are kind of preaching the same message here.
Mhm.
But Morgan was so ready to like walk it back and say, well, it's okay if you're really not feeling well, if you're sick, it's really okay to tell your husband no for like one night or 2 nights. That's fine. You just can't deprive him long term. And Lori is just like, nope, he gets what he wants when he wants
Yep.
it because he's the man. Lori says that depriving your husband of sex causes Satan to tempt him, which seems like a lot for Satan to keep track of.
Satan's doing them like from sundown to sunup. Satan is busy.
I mean, it's like Satan just sits there with like a little egg timer
Yep.
for each particular Christian man. And, he flips it over when they have sex, and then all the sand drips through 72 hours at a time, like 72 hours later. And there's a little assistant there ringing a bell to let Satan know that it's time to go tempt that guy.
That's so funny.
This is what I see when I see this.
I mean, but that's what you were taught. You were literally taught that if a man doesn't have sex every 48 to 72 hours, his nuts will literally explode, like, and it'll be like an emergency.
That's only slightly hyperbole.
Yeah, we're laughing because it's very serious. Like that's up.
Yeah, but it's
Oh.
it's true. That's wild. It's the wildest I ever heard.
No, I just feel bad
Because you can't masturbate. You can't masturbate. So
right,
like,
that's
what
the
are
other
you gonna
like
do?
the other part of this problem. So okay, let's talk about something more cheerful. Let's talk about how much Lori hates working mothers and loves
like a
traditional
lot.
gender roles.
Shots fired, Sadie.
She is the ultimate hypocrite too, because she literally she did the thing. She taught and raised, quote unquote, other people's kids.
Yeah,
Well, that's how she knows it's wrong, is because she did it.
yeah, but the way she speaks about these, evil people who work in daycares and are teachers and indoctrinate your children, it's so spiteful and vengeful. And then that's a thing that she literally did, and she just will not even mention it hardly. That's what's so interesting about her is like she is always innocent.
Rewriting history. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
innocent.
So
Ugh.
if it's something that she did in the past that she's now against, she's speaking about it like, oh yeah, of course I regret this, but I'm so glad I found the way. But when it's something that other people are doing, she spares no words for them. It's, you are evil and you are sinful and you are working against God's plan. Lori is a lot more hardcore about this traditional gender roles thing than even somebody like Jill Rodriguez,
Yes.
who I had to work into this episode because I need to talk about Jill with you, Jen.
Well, we can do the 5 degrees of separation because Jill is a real Pearl diehard. So
Right. So Jill is also, I'm going to talk about the pearls in a minute. Jill is also well known for selling Plexus.
mhm.
And I think that Lori subtweeted her about this.
Really?
Yeah, because Lori tweeted about how even working as a MLM rep still counts as working outside the home.
Okay, that's bull because of the Proverbs. What is it? Which Proverbs 31? She's making things and doing crafts, right? That's
Yes.
You can have a business.
Did you hear our episode about how Michelle Obama is literally the ideal Proverbs 31 woman?
No.
Oh my gosh. I'll find the episode and send it to you. I know we have a huge back catalog and it takes a while to get through, so I'll find the episode. But if you go verse by verse, line by line, there is not a single line that Michelle Obama does not fulfill.
No, you know what I'll do? I'll take that clip and I'll make it into one of those video clips and I'll post it on the TikTok. By the way, if you're listening to this show, please go and interact with our TikToks because we've been shadow banned from TikTok because the algorithm doesn't like us for some reason. So please go interact with all of our content on TikTok so that we get unshadow banned.
Yes, please help us on TikTok.
I'm going to follow you right now
please
because
help
I didn't
us.
even know you had a TikTok.
See, that's the other part of the problem.
You know, we got it like back in a couple of years ago when we first started doing the podcast, and we'd post stuff on it from like time to time. And then we switched to a new distributor for our podcast a month ago. And the new distributor has like the app that makes those like audio clip video things that you can just post on social media. So it'll just like transcribe it for you and you just post like a picture in the background. And so I'm just like, sweet, I'm just going to make a ton of these. And I made a ton of them and just started posting them on TikTok. And they think that I'm spamming because but I'm just trying to, you know,
I hate when you're like trying to, because I'll purge my followers or likes sometimes, and it'll be like, you're doing that too fast. You're unfollowing too many people. I'm like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do with my own follower list?
I hate these people. I don't even know who they are.
I got that on Instagram when I finally like had a breakdown moment and unfollowed all my Fundie friends from college.
Oh.
But now I just go back and stalk them on Instagram. Did you see so-and-so had a 4th baby? I have like Kyle Sanderson.
Those are rookie numbers, man.
I have like Kyle Sanderson friends who have deconstructed. So we go through and look at people's profiles and talk shit about how funny they still are. It's really fun.
Man, J-Rod is, that's like the Fundie equivalent of like when your friend finds your ex's dating profile and then sends it to you.
Okay, so here's the thing about J-Rod.
Speaking of people with too many kids.
She sells Plexus, and when Lori posted about MLMs still count as working outside the home, you wicked sinful heathen, she name dropped a couple MLMs, and one of them was Plexus. So
that is specific.
I think that was a Jill subtweet, and you can't tell me otherwise. Of course, Jill Rodriguez has also been known to cozy up to Debbie Pearl. I think Nuri and Kaylee actually lived with the Pearls for a while.
I did not know that.
Yeah, doing some kind of, you have to look this up, but they did some kind of weird, like, they just went to assist the Pearls in their ministry for a while and lived at their house.
Speaking of people who have medical problems that won't die, remember when Michael Pearl had a heart attack?
Whoa!
This was like a couple years ago. His daughter talked about it on Facebook, and I was like, not fingers crossed, but I wasn't not interested.
I mean,
Man.
I can say this stuff. I don't care. I don't have who's going to come after me.
Jeez, I mean, I'm not. I've said some wild stuff, but usually that ends up on the "I gave it all" tier of the Patreon. And there was a supercut coming for both of our "I gave it all" tier Patreon subscribers.
Michael Pearl is like my number one. Like it's on site. So like
Steven Anderson is the one that I just gets under my skin worse.
Dude, I kept calling Lori in my first episode. I kept calling her Lori Anderson. So it's like, because it just seems like she would be a sister wife.
Steven Anderson's wife reposts transformed wife content
but she has said anti-Pearl stuff.
Right.
Zuzu.
Well, she's a loose cannon. Zuzu's a loose cannon.
Dude, I love Zuzu. I don't like actually love her. It's the same way that I say that the transformed wife is iconic, because Zuzu does not hold back, and she's like got that like dry German wit, and she does not give a
Yeah, she's a lot of fun for a
like
Fundie.
Steven.
Oh. Steven Anderson, the man who like pissed himself in his car because he got tased by border control agents. Is that the same Steven Anderson that we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that guy. Okay. Just checking.
Just making except for the ones that tased Steven Anderson.
So I have a very serious question. And this is about how Jill Rodriguez and Lori Alexander have both really tried to cozy up to Debbie Pearl. Which one of them is Debbie more annoyed with? Like, which one is the kid that's like, why can't you be more like your sister?
Oh, I got it.
Go ahead.
I think that Debbie secretly very much dislikes Jill because do you remember, this is niche, okay, it was Kaylee's courtship announcement or something, and Debbie commented like, "Oh, the cars are really loud," or like something like and then you said two of the girls stayed with her. I feel like she was probably mean to them and made them do domestic labor. I feel like Debbie and Lori are probably friends.
Here's the other thing, though. Here's the thing that the one reason why I would think that might not be true is because we had, I think it was somebody in our Facebook group talked about how they met J-Rod in person. And apparently if you meet J-Rod in person, she is like the most charismatic and engaging person to meet.
Really?
And yes. Oh yeah. Like she's a lunatic on the internet. Like when you meet her on the internet, when you see her on the internet, you're just like, who the is this person? Like, what is her dealio? And when you meet her in person, she's just like so charismatic and so engaging, and she'll look you right in the eye, and you'll just like, and you're just like, she's got like that aura around her, man. Like she wouldn't have blown up to the level that she was if she wasn't both bat insane and also just like a really charismatic person. That's the thing. You can be like just some crazy person and you could just say stuff on the internet, but no one will pay attention to. People will just be like, oh, that's a crazy person. But if you're a crazy person who's also super charismatic and who people like and who people talk to, then that gets engagement and people will see that, and that'll build and build and build and build. So I think that like Debbie Pearl is probably like, J-Rod's a bit embarrassing on the internet, but like when we hang, it's like, you know, we're tight. Whereas Lori Alexander seems like the type of person who's just like, I like, you know, she hypes my brand, but I hate her because she's such a pain in the ass.
I bet she's passive aggressive in real life.
Oh yeah, she just like seems like the most like rudest, meanest person that you could ever like. Sadie, you're into like college football, or you're into like Jen, are you into sports at all?
No,
like you know, like when you hang out with fans who are like fans of the same team as you, but their opinions about the team are dog shit. Like it's kind of like that.
I could say that about some Fundie Snarkers. Yeah. I'm biting my tongue here because I have like comedy stuff I want to say. Okay, just imagine like Lori going to Debbie's house and they're like hanging out in the kitchen. She's like, when's the last time you cleaned this microwave?
Yes.
Or like, oh, you put oranges in the fridge? Interesting. Or this
is exactly what I see. Or just trying to like out Fundie each other, like quoting scripture back and forth around like a super niche point.
My friend Megan gets mad at me because I don't have a Brita filter. That's like the kind of that's like the kind of thing that.
Oh, you're drinking tap water, Debbie?
Yeah, I'm straight and drinking tap. I don't give a. I'm drinking Skykill River Punch. That's what I'm drinking every single day. It makes your bones go strong because it's like high metal content. It's.
I'm not drinking tap water because the crunchies in Portland took the fluoride out of ours.
I need the taste of the fluoride to know it's real.
Yeah, you got to taste it. It's got to like.
So, I see Jill and Debbie. Like I've seen all of these different types of Fundie interactions, right? So, I see Jill and Debbie as having like a great time together in person. Like they can get together, they can put on the hardcore Fundie mask and fellowship. They have sweet fellowship.
Yeah, I bet Jill is the life of the party.
Yeah. And like the thing is that charismatic Fundies exist. I've talked on and on about how Jack Scopp, it was like meeting a celebrity. He had just this magnetic personality. And I hope jail just rotted it right out of him. But he was very magnetic, engaging, just electrically charged kind of person.
What about, did you see this when you were Fundie, his sermon about the shaft?
I was there, Jen.
You were?
I was there. I was in the audience. I was actually sitting next to, we call him Richard on the show. That's his pseudonym. But he was my very first Fundie date. And I was 16.
Oh, yeah. But you'll never forget that day.
Nope. I must have just turned 17. And he was 21. He was a Bible college student. That's normal in Fundie. That's not even an age gap in Fundie. And of course, like we weren't smooching or anything because we were super Fundie. And I'm friends with him now and like we're cool. But I was sitting next to him on like my second Fundie date ever. And I did not know what masturbation was. So I did not know what Scop was doing, but I knew I felt major ick. And it was so uncomfortable. And it's like Richard on one side and my brother on the other side, who's like 15. And both of them are getting very uncomfortable. And I can feel the tension in the room. Like, this is wrong. Something is wrong. But I didn't know what that looked like. So I didn't know what was wrong. I just knew something was weird. Yeah, but yeah, I was there. I could take you to the exact seat I was sitting in.
Well, I'm sorry to bring up that awful memory for you. I was just trying to make fun of him.
No, that's okay. I'm totally like desensitized to that one. I was also, so like 3 months later, right before Richard and I broke up, I was at the ladies' conference at First Baptist Church of Hammond. And I was sitting next to Richard's mother in church because we were having a like get to know the person your son is dating thing. And Scop went on another highly sexual sermon about how women have to serve their husbands and like all of this. And I'm sitting next to like, the mother of the dude I'm seeing.
Can we get some loaves and fishes around here? Like, why is every sermon got to be...
Scop was like that towards the end. He wasn't like that earlier. Like, this is a guy that I knew for like, we were family friends. He was friends with my dad. Like my dad babysat his kids. So like he was a family friend and I knew him my whole life. And wild. He was not, something happened to him. He was not always like that.
Maybe he got a brain tumor.
I think the power, possibly. I think the power got to him. I think he was just not equipped to cope with the power that he had. He is, and I hate to speak nicely about him because I hate his guts. He is incredibly intelligent. He is very high IQ.
That's what makes these people dangerous.
Yeah. He is very charismatic. He is a very smart man, and he's got a great personality when he turns it on. He is ugly when he wants to be. And he is so charismatic when he wants to be. And he got himself in a position where he would inherit power, and then he inherited the power and it ate his soul. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Jack Scott.
Wow.
So anyway, I do see Jill as maybe not dissimilar. Jill has a very similar personality to some of the bigger name pastors' wives that I've known.
Yeah, and what is this? David, I was going to say Shrek. He's a wannabe pastor.
And she wants that status. He's a wannabe, and she wants that status of being a big name pastor's wife whose husband pastors a huge church. And she knows that she will never achieve it because she hitched her wagon to the wrong star. And that's why she is the way she is.
The great tragedy of Jill Rodriguez.
Hey, can we go take up the offering break? Because we have like a little fun game to play when we get back.
All right, let's go do that.
Hey, Sadie here. If this is your first time listening to the Leaving Eden podcast, make sure you go back and check out episode 57. It's a primer episode for new listeners. That episode tells my personal story and gives you all the terms and information that you'll need to know going forward. Also, check out our cult true crime series, The First Family of Fundamentalism, so that you can get the whole cult story. If you like our show, you can support us by joining our Patreon, where we have extended and uncensored episodes as well as other bonus content available. You can also join in the discussion in our Facebook group. That group is called Eden Exodus. Tell a friend, tell a family member, tell your worst enemy. The Leaving Eden podcast is a fully independent podcast, and we really appreciate your support. Now, back to the show.
We are back from our break. Thank you guys so much. It's me and Sadie, and we are here with Jen of Fundie Fridays fame. Still here with you, Jen, and we're so happy to be here with you. I feel like we've really hit the big time, to be honest. Jen, as we know, I'm going to keep saying this, is the leader of the Fundie Snark movement.
Yes, much like Josh Harris is the leader of the deconstruction movement.
This week, we're talking about Lori Alexander, the transformed wife. So the wild thing about Lori Alexander and a lot of her views is that what I've read of them is that they're very much in line with the things that I had to read when I was doing all of the research for last week's episode on incel forums. Like, honestly, I feel like if you took an incel's brain out of their head and put it in like a woman's body, then that's how you would get Lori Alexander.
It's because there's only so many ways to hate women.
It's true. And generally, if you hate women, then you're going to have a lot in common with other people who hate women.
Yeah. I mean, if you hate an entire, like, nearly half of the population, not counting non-binary people, you're going to have to take friendship where you can find it.
Well, if you hate women, you probably also hate non-binary people as
That's
well.
true. That's true.
Anyway, I thought that this would be an opportunity for us to play a game. I think that we should play a game where we have to, like, decide whether a quote is by an incel or by the transformed wife Lori Alexander. So these are all either quotes from. Well, I'm going to read the quotes, and then will I have Sadie and Jen guess them, because I know the ones that are the incel quotes, because I
feel like I'm going to be good at
it.
this.
Okay.
Okay.
So these are all quotes from either Lori Alexander or quotes from Reddit user Women Only Love Chad.
No!
That's the name. I kid you not. Like, no, because like when I was doing the research for the episode, I was like finding a bunch of like actual incels in
to like track and document.
Track and document. And this guy here was extremely outspoken. His Reddit username is Women Only Love Chad. And so I figured that I would take some of my favorite quotes of his and play a game out of them. So so I'm going to read the first quote, and you're going to tell me whether or not you think it's from Lori Alexander or whether it's from Women Only Love Chad.
Okay.
So quote 1. Okay. Men are the majority of people selflessly risking themselves like firefighters and advancing civilization. Without men, women would be living in huts in 2021.
I think that's a Lori quote.
Yeah,
Sadie?
the word selflessly makes me think Lori.
She loves firefighters.
Yeah, we're going to talk about her love of construction workers later, too.
That is a quote from Reddit user Women Only Love Chad. That is not, but I told you guys that.
Shame
on this man, and shame on Lori Alexander for allowing herself to be so horrible that something like that could conceivably come out.
She's going to be like, I made some new friends on Reddit today.
Okay, here's another one. The sexual behavior of women is the deciding factor in cultural success.
Sorry, I might need to blanket train my dog.
Jesus,
just kidding. He's a baby. I would never hurt him.
You know, you don't have to blanket train until 6 months. You're fine.
So what did I miss?
So this quote is, the sexual behavior of women is the deciding factor in cultural success.
Now I'm totally second guessing myself because of that first one. I'm going to say it's Reddit.
That is... Sadie, do you want to give a guess?
No, I remember this one. I know the answer to this one.
This is Lori Alexander.
Oh, damn it.
This one is Lori Alexander. See, we're 0 for 2.
This is a hard game.
That's the point.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with another one. Tell me what you think of this one. So it's, the radical feminist goal was to dismantle the nuclear family and make women superior than men. Yes, they screamed equality, but if you read enough of their writings, they falsely believe that women are superior to men. Who is that? Is that Lori Alexander, or is that Reddit user Women Only Love Chad?
That one's got to be Lori.
I think it's Women Only Love Chad.
No, it's Lori Alexander. That's Lori Alexander.
Dude, take my title away. I am no longer.
I'm telling you guys. Okay. Here's another one. Maybe I don't know if this is easier or harder. Here we go. Okay. Women can get casual sex with such ease. A woman saying she's slept with many guys is like a rich teen saying he owns a Lamborghini.
That's
that
Reddit.
One's easier. That one's Reddit because of the Lamborghini.
Yeah, see, that's the giving away. See, if I had changed Lamborghini to luxury car, then it would have been Lori Alexander.
What's a car that was like big in the 80s?
A Lamborghini, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Probably, yeah. Okay. So you guys are Jen. You are 1 for 4. Which is, I mean, you could battle it back and you could get back to 50% here, which is a passing grade in Europe.
What about
not in
homeschool?
America. Yeah, if you're homeschooled with AC, what's passing grade in ACE homeschool, Sadie?
I think it varies by the school. At my school, it was 80.
Oh, for real? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Higher standards, but the education.
I know all about how the Loch Ness Monster is proof of the flood.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to the Creation Museum?
I actually have not.
She's been to Kent Hovind's dinosaur park.
You went to the Dino Land?
Oh my god, yes. I went to the original Dino Land, like, before he got kicked out of Pensacola. I swung on the giant dino swing and, like, excavated fossils in his sandbox. That sounded dirty. That was not my intention. So, okay, do you want to do like one more quote or two more quotes?
There's 2 quotes left.
Okay.
So here's one of them. The false portrayal of being pro-life as misogyny is just feminists being feminists again and wanting to look oppressed. Is that Lori Alexander or is that Reddit user Women Only Love Chad?
I think it's Reddit because honestly, that sounds too smart to be Lori.
I think it's maybe Lori and she plagiarized it from someone else.
Jen, you are correct.
Oh, look at that.
That is Reddit user Women Only Love Chad. And finally, our last one. A woman's strength is for nurturing life, nurturing beauty, and creating a home. A man's strength is for fighting. They fight nature to subdue it. They fight their enemies who threaten our livelihoods from within and from without. They fight to protect and to provide for those they're responsible for. Lori Alexander or Reddit incel?
Oh,
that is a lot of like fight for Lori. It's very on brand for her message. All that fighting sounds kind of incel-y though.
I'm going to go with Lori, although I'm not confident in my answer.
I'm going to go with Reddit, and I'm not confident either.
That is Lori Alexander, the transformed wife. So I think you guys both got 3 each.
I think
right?
we both got 50-50 somehow.
See, like I said, like you can't tell one way or the other whether these things came out of Lori Alexander's mouth or whether they were typed by Reddit incel Women Only Love Chad.
I think that, like, obviously there are probably some incels who consider themselves to be Christian, but I feel like literally the only difference in the philosophies is the Christianity.
Yeah, no, like that's a huge part of it because I mean, as if people are listening to our show, if they heard on last week's episode, there's very much the same. There's a kind of purity culture that's different, but it very much operates on a lot of the same ideas.
Well, I guess I didn't know that because I would have thought that incels would be happy as long as they got to have sex with somebody, like regardless of marriage.
Well, they would.
Yeah, but it's the idea of like female virginity is still very much a thing, and it's the same elevation of sex to being the most important thing that a person does or doesn't do, a defining factor.
It is like one of the principles of their philosophy on both sides. Like it's concerned with sex, and you're right.
And like, and the idea that sex fundamentally changes a person and who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I want to point out, I feel like is very worth pointing out, is how many different topics Lori feels qualified to speak on. So
that's very Fundie-ish, though. They talk about everything.
They think that if it's I got a lot of opinions about this.
Go ahead.
Well, just that, like, Fundies say, we're in the world, but not of the world, yet everything they talk about is the world, which and from my perspective, that makes sense, because I'm like, duh, you can't live in the world and not be of it, right?
Right. Or like, even in universe, like, didn't God put you in this particular place and time on purpose? Or did
Yeah.
like that whole like God who does everything on purpose go out the window for you all
Oh
of
no,
a
are you
sudden?
talking about predestination?
No. Except for yes. Except for no.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is they think that since they can get all their answers from the Bible, that means that they get to speak on everything.
Mm-hmm. So there is also a scripture verse that I wanted to pull up that maybe explains why Lori thinks she can talk about everything. I am reading this from King James, so TW for anybody who needs that. This is Titus chapter 2, verse 3 through 5. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. So that verse is used within fundamentalism to basically make a younger woman listen to anything an older woman has to say.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to like be experts on everything, and I think that maybe shines a light on why Lori thinks she has to have an opinion about everything. I mean, yeah, but
she was going to do that regardless.
That is there's a reason that she thinks she's not only entitled to have an opinion about everything, but she's obligated to have an opinion about everything.
It's her burden.
It's like, you know how when you go on Twitter and you see somebody whose like Twitter bio is like 80 different ideologies and like 80 different policy positions, but
Yes.
like it's not like I'm a political candidate running for office and you need to know what my position on XYZ policy is. It's like I need to like you're just some guy that is, I guess, feels the need to tell everybody how you feel about trade policy and like free trade and also like the economy and whether you're a neoliberal or not, or you're this or you're that or you're the other thing, and you need to like let everybody know like what subset. Or it's also like metal bands where you can have an entire genre of metal that's just one band.
Yes. So on that note, I would like to jump into Lori's worst takes highlight reel.
Oh, God.
Always updating.
Yes. So I've got some new stuff. I've got some classic stuff in here. The first one, of course, I wanted to talk about is the men prefer debt-free virgins without tattoos, because that's what broke her, like that's what made people aware of her.
It just seems like a Mad Lib. Like she's just throwing in random adjectives.
Also, I just want to say, as a man, my dating history says otherwise. If you aren't drowning in under $50,000 of student debt, then you probably don't hate yourself enough to date me.
Oh. This one is interesting to me because it combines several niche factors of fundamentalism that don't always go together. That's kind of fascinating to me, and that I think is very indicative of who Lori is. A lot of fundies kind of have their thing that they're all about, right? It'll be about the King James Bible, or modesty, or hating on people with different colored hair and body mods, like Jill Rodriguez.
She picks on that a lot.
She really picks at people's weight and body size. She picks at brightly colored hair, tattoos, piercings, and of course any and all trans people that she comes across,
or suspected trans people.
Right? Yeah. Oh, her for that, for all of it. But that's like one thing, and then being debt free is another thing. That's a big Gothard principle. Of course, it also ties into like Dave Ramsey. Mm-hmm. That's a whole other subset of fundies for whom that is their thing. And then purity culture, virginity culture is like the girl-defined fundies. That's their major thing. And then modesty would be like the subset of that thing, except for when Bethany decides that it's no longer immodest to wear shorteralls because she now wants to. It's really interesting to see those like three branches of fundamentalism come together in one concise sentence.
You're right, because like to the random outsider, just like a funny sentence, but we're able to pick out like what each thing, like what it's a dog whistle for.
I think that's what makes her both so interesting and so frustrating to me as a person, because she's almost breaking Fundie social norms by being so broad in her content.
Mm-hmm.
If I can put myself back in Fundie brain, I almost think if I had encountered her in my Fundie years, I might have thought, why does she think she's an expert on all of these different things?
Oh.
Interesting.
I almost wonder, like, if I might, and this is really hypothetical, but I do stay in touch with Fundie Brain because of doing this show. I almost wonder if I would have thought, why is this woman trying to set herself up on a pedestal for everybody to listen to about every topic? Because that's so atypical to be as broad in your pet peeves and things you hate and things you preach against as she is.
Right, because I'm thinking about, like, the hookers are specifically known to be like, they're the people who you talk to when you want marriage advice. Or if you're like, I need financial advice, I'm going to talk to Tom
Kimmel, and then I'm going to get all my money stolen in a Ponzi scheme.
So, like, it's very much a thing, like a specialist heavy subculture.
Yeah, and it's also I think in Fundiedom, you want to have a guy for that. It's like it's a culture of, oh, you need help with your bus ministry, I got a guy. Mm-hmm. Oh, you need help with your youth ministry, I got a guy. You need marriage help, I got a guy. And Jack Scoff, when he wrote that terrible, terrible mental health book, he was trying to become the mental health and counseling guy. And of course, we all see where that got him: jail. But that's how he ended up counseling this minor that he should not have been counseling, and how he ended up committing a terrible crime and going to jail.
I think a lot of it, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think Lori's just probably always had a really strong personality, and she's liked to teach and counsel because, she was a teacher. And then she said in some of her videos that she used to and still does counsel women at her church. And I feel like she tried to focus all that energy into this ministry, but it's backfiring because nobody wants to hear this in current year. So I just think it's interesting that I have a feeling that if it wasn't for the internet, she would still be doing this kind of thing offline. She just really likes to help people in her way. I don't know, because she gets super defensive about it. You're right when you were saying, like, what gives her the right to say this kind of stuff, because she'll always be defensive and say, well, I'm not teaching everyone, I'm only teaching women, or like, women can't speak in the church, I'm not doing that, I'm just doing it online.
So I had initially thought that Lori's nickname on the Snark forums of Aunt Lori was a reference to the ants in The Handmaid's Tale. And if you haven't read the book, seen the movies, the ants are older women or women who are not able to have children who police and control and gatekeep access to the women who are able to bear children. That's why I thought her nickname as Aunt Lori was a Handmaid's Tale reference, because that's who I feel she's trying to be.
She would probably hate, that comparison, which makes me want to call it to her more.
Well, she's a woman who is upholding the patriarchy that oppresses other women, while she is somewhat insulated from the worst effects of it.
And that's how a lot of, patriarchy and like white supremacy works, is that this is the one tiny sliver of power that they get. So they're going to run with it. And this is the only approved job / ministry she can do. So yeah, she's putting her whole Loracy into it.
Well, to go,
God.
You know who is going to text me about that joke immediately when they hear it? Dinah Housefire. Yep.
Man, I'm like, the thing that I'm thinking of right now, though, because when you were talking about how she's talking about like every single topic and how she likes to teach on every single topic, in ways that, I guess, not to bring him up twice in the same episode on purpose, but you know who I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Kanye West again, because he's like, his whole thing is, he's like, I want to be an educator, I want to be a teacher, because that's the kind of person who he says, oh, people look up to educators, people look up to teachers, and I want to have people look up to me and listen to me, and that's how you get people to respect you and acknowledge you and say, you're the greatest, you're the smartest, please tell me everything that you know. He wants to be a teacher, but he doesn't want to do the part of the job that means, oh, I have to actually listen to other people to learn stuff before I go teaching.
Yeah, I have to learn things and read things and then write lesson plans and all that.
You can't just say
She's super mean.
Like, I'm a genius, therefore everything that comes out of my mouth is the words of a genius, therefore it's right. Like, it's the same sort of thing with the Fundies, where they're just like, well, I know everything because it comes from the Bible, and I know the Bible, so therefore everything that I say is right because it's coming from the Bible. Like, it's the exact same thing that Lori's trying to do here, where she's like, I'm trying to teach on every single topic because I know the Bible, and the Bible is right.
Morgan used to do that a lot, where she would say, like, we have authority because God gave us the authority. As children of God, we are allowed to say these things, and we have, I wonder if it's like that.
Love those thought-stopping cliches, man. There's information control, cult control, man. Cult control, it's real.
So let's go to the next. This is a new Lori post that happened actually just a couple days before we got in here to record this episode.
Oh, new Lori post just dropped.
Yeah.
I'm gonna open it up so I can read it. Okay, I'm just gonna read her tweet. This is from February 17th of 2023. This is pretty fresh. A man at Target took my returned item. His fingernails were painted pink. I have no disgust for him or any like him. I grieve for him and prayed for him as I left. Okay. I grieve for all those who were lost in sin and in need of a savior. Their eternity is bleak without Christ.
Why are you shopping at Target? Sorry.
Mine was the same joke. I was going to say, that's what you get for shopping at Target. You should have gone to Walmart instead.
Why is Lori shopping at Target when they have the huge Pride Month display every year?
She did not leave silently. She 100% said something.
I would really, number one, I would like to know why she is shopping at Target, otherwise known as the Den of Evil.
Yeah.
I would also, I think it's so interesting that she saw a person who she perceived to be a man who was wearing nail polish and immediately...
Yeah, you don't know that person.
You don't know who they are. That could have hypothetically been a trans guy, and then him wearing nail polish should fit completely within your views, right, Lori? Right, Lori? But also, aside from the speculating on this person's gender, she assumes that they are not a Christian. Just from that.
Mm-hmm.
Your eternity is bleak without Christ.
Well, what's Lori's theology? Is she once saved, always saved?
I would assume so. She hasn't said any. So the people who believe that you can lose your salvation, or the people who are Calvinist, they tell you, like, they don't just go along and not say anything about it. And I have not seen Lori say anything along those lines. So I assume she's once saved, always saved. So what if this person said the sinner's prayer and got baptized as a bus kid when they were 5 years old? Their eternity won't be bleak without Christ, Lori. Their eternity will be in heaven because they got saved. I don't know. Just such a mess of wild accusations to make about somebody.
And she was in the return line too. So, she was like...
Ugh.
No, see, that's why she was at Target, because she was probably returning like a Christmas gift that wasn't holy enough, or she found out that it was bought at Target and she went to return it so that she could go buy it at Walmart instead.
Yeah, and she probably didn't have the receipt, and she was like, "Well, why do I need it?" And she caused a whole scene.
Oh, can you imagine being the retail work? Like I've worked retail before. You ever work retail, Jen?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to imagine being the retail worker that has to fucking help Lori Alexander return an item that maybe she doesn't have the receipt for, or she's like dissatisfied or something. Just
and she just stares at you like the way she stares at the camera in her TikTok videos.
And she's licking her lips.
Yeah.
Wait, Lori Alexander's on TikTok now?
Yeah, I tried to watch some of her videos.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my God.
We need to do a
tried to
follow-up episode.
I tried to watch some of her videos last night and I just couldn't get through them. They were so bad.
I'm like, wait, like bad is in quality or bad is in the things that she's saying or bad or both?
Yes.
Let's get Laura on CapCut. Start making some edits.
Hold on. Is Lori on Cameo? Can we get a cameo from Lori Alexander?
I doubt it, but I could resurrect my Fundie email address and start emailing her for advice.
Are any of the Fundies on Cameo? Can we get like anybody? I mean, I bet Ginger Duggar.
Sister Cindy's on there, and Ginger is,
I bet Ginger Duggar's on Cameo. That's the most f***ing Ginger Duggar thing to ever happen, is to be on Cameo. Oh, man.
I just know Jeremy like sat her down and made her sign up for it.
Yeah, he's like, we need this Cameo so that I can afford another few months to learn how to hate gay people from John MacArthur.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, and that article recently came out about John MacArthur's church, I'm pretty sure, and it happened like the week.
I want to go on that rabbit trail and I can't right now.
Rabbit trail.
Oh, yeah. Yo, so what's the deal with it?
What is the deal with rabbit trails, folks?
Okay, I think that it's a Fundie thing because Ginger said rabbit trail, because the way that I remember, the way that it's supposed to be, in my opinion, is rabbit hole, which is from Alice in Wonderland, which would make sense because I doubt that you guys were allowed to read that.
I had a Bowdlerized version.
How do you Bowdlerize a book about fucking taking acid and like losing your goddamn mind?
God, they have a Bowdlerized version of everything in Fundie World.
What about Little Women?
Yeah, I think I read the original Little Women because my grandmother gave it to me.
Do they have a Bowdlerized version of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? Because that's like the equivalent of Alice in Wonderland.
That's like the adult version.
Yes, the Bowdlerized version of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas starts. We were in the desert, and then it goes straight to the end.
It's about Jesus.
What is the word that you're saying? I want to Google it. Balderizing?
Bowdlerize. Bowdlerize. I can give you a definition. So, Jen, in the late 1800s, I believe, women were slowly gaining more access to education, and books that were previously considered inappropriate for ladies' eyes. One of the books that the ladies really wanted to read was works by Shakespeare. There was this guy, Thomas Bowdler, and I think he was a minister. And he wanted women to have access to basic education, which points for him for that. But he felt that Shakespeare was just too rough for delicate ladies' eyes. And of course, if you look into Shakespeare, you'll quickly realize he might not have been all that wrong, because Shakespeare is way dirtier than you think it is. References making the beast with two backs, for example.
Okay.
In Othello.
Or jokes about maiden heads in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, there's so much sex jokes in Shakespeare that is not even funny. So Thomas Bowdler rewrote Shakespeare to make it more appropriate for young Victorian era ladies, and removed references and words and jokes that he thought were not appropriate. So to Bowdlerize is to change usually a classic work of literature, but it can be applied in other scenarios, to sanitize a thing while attempting to preserve like the thing itself.
That's interesting, because you were talking about Laurie and the Handmaid's Tale. In the second book, that's one of the things that the aunts have to do is censor the books.
That it's a form of censorship. But for example, I read Macbeth in my high school literature class, and the famous line where Lady Macbeth shouts, "Out, damn spot," was changed to "Out, foul spot" in my Becca printed books. So anyway, that's what Bowdlerizing is. Should we go on to Lori's thoughts on voting? Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Lori's thoughts on, speaking of, women's rights to education and so on and so forth. I would love to read you what Lori has to say about women voting.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Here's the picture. Are you still so thankful for your ability to vote? Women overwhelmingly vote Democrat and for abortion. I wonder why. There are many good reasons God ordained men to be the leaders and ones in authority. Yes, there are bad men, but women weren't created to lead. And she references 1 Timothy 2:14.
I feel safer in my bed at night knowing that Lori Alexander doesn't vote.
Her views seem to be, she's kind of waffled on this. Her views seem to be that suffrage was bad. Women should never have had the legal right to vote. Since we do now, you're under your husband's authority. If he tells you don't vote, don't vote. If he tells you to vote, vote in alignment with whatever he votes for. I heard this growing up. It wasn't that women shouldn't vote, but I did hear that you're under your husband's authority and you're obligated to let him tell you how to vote. I even knew IFB husbands and wives where the husband would go into the voting booth with the wife to fill out her ballot.
That's a felony.
Yeah. Yep, it sure is.
That's legit a felony. That's literally illegal. You can't do that. Like, I don't know how the people who are working at the polls, literally it's their job to say, no, you can't go in there. She has to go in there by herself.
It was Fundie territory.
Yeah.
That's voting fraud. That's voter fraud. Have we opened up a congressional investigation into this? I want to hear about this. We need an investigation into this. This is voting fraud. We need to change the laws about that.
Or there might be some exaggerations in their stories.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen people do that.
I mean, I don't know. I think that if you think women shouldn't vote, then you shouldn't vote.
I think there's a reason why women shouldn't vote rhetoric bothers me more than almost any other anti-feminism rhetoric. Would you two be okay if I did like a quick self-psychoanalysis on this?
Go for it.
I live for it.
I think this bothers me more than almost anything else because the mainstream IFB did demonize suffragettes as rebellious women who wanted to step outside of God's plan. However, they're also really big on like the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, and they're huge on no taxation without representation. So as a whole, they tend to say, like, the husband should determine if the husband says you can't vote, you can't vote. And if the husband says you can vote, the wife should always vote in alignment with her husband. But the IFB generally believe that women should have the right to vote because women are taxed. Basically, their take is the suffragettes had a good idea, but bad reasoning. And they, went about it the wrong way. Where have we heard that before? What with, the strikes and the marches and all that was open rebellion, and they shouldn't have done that.
Last week, we were talking about the accusations of virtue signaling concept, where you can't actually attack the merits of a concept. So you just make an attack based on like vibes, based on they went around this the wrong way, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like if, for like they would on The Bachelor.
Yes.
I've never seen The Bachelor, but I know that doing things for the right or the wrong reasons is a thing on that show.
So the IFB is like generally cool with women owning property, mostly for the purposes of using it as a tax shelter, like an asset shelter for a husband who may or may not be committing felonies, a la Josh Duggar putting everything into Anna's name around the time of his arrest. Do you remember that?
No idea what you're talking about, officer.
Yeah, right. Was someone here downloading illicit material? And they're fine with, the IFB is not the worst of Christian patriarchy because they're fine with wives having access to a family-run bank account. They technically discourage women from having a separate account that their husband's name isn't on, but they don't, like, joint accounts are fine, and even joint credit cards are allowed.
From my understanding, too, IFB, they have no problem with women voting. Like, they want more voters to usher in their theocracy. So,
right, as long as you're voting
as long as you're voting for who they want, they're all for it, right? That's why they have so many kids. So it's very weird and antiquated. This opinion seems random almost, like, that she has.
Well, Lori breaks the mold when it comes to a lot of these doctrines because, I mean, credit where credit's due. She's consistent in her ideology, whereas the IFB will break their ideology for extremely opportunistic reasons whenever they want to.
Yes. See, I generally feel like because the IFB believed that suffragettes who wanted financial and legal equality kind of had the right idea. They just took it too far and they shouldn't have been so rebellious, but what they actually wanted wasn't so bad. Women's voting rights were the closest thing I had to feminism growing up. That was the only approved way for me to engage with this idea. The only thing that was feminist that I was allowed to like or be interested in. So for me, I think that's why the women shouldn't vote rhetoric gets under my skin so bad.
That's interesting.
I wish I could know. I don't sit around and just regret coming up IFB because I don't find it helpful. That doesn't, do anything for me in the life that I have now. One of the things I truly wish I could have experienced is a feminist upbringing. That sounds so cool.
That kind of reminds me of what you're talking to me about your Wizard of Oz lunchbox.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that you had.
The thermos.
And then
Yeah.
or the thermos. And then they're just like, actually, Wizard of Oz is
demonic. Yeah, you gotta get rid of it. So I don't know. This one gets to me and makes me mad in a way. I'm usually able to like laugh at Lori. We can laugh at her for not knowing how economics works, though. If you're interested,
go for it.
I think this one is a little more recent too. Here's her tweet. Sadly, most families can't get by on one income. I hear this often. Do you know why? Feminism. Women flooded the workplace, lowering wages, thus making it harder to make a living on one income. This is where stepping out in faith and trusting God comes into play.
This is the take that I heard so many times when I was doing my manosphere research. It's like, like the whole immigrant, like they took our jobs, like the South Park thing.
Yeah.
It's like that, but with women.
Yes.
I think Lori Alexander is advocating for a labor shortage and double-digit inflation. That's what she wants. That's what she thinks will make America great again, I guess, is double-digit inflation and a labor shortage.
That one just cracked me up. It's like, ma'am, that's not how it. Also, what about the woman that you employed as a nanny? You employed women.
Yeah, but that was domestic labor, so that's okay.
I cannot with this. Jen, do you want to read her thirsty tweet about construction workers that you sent me?
Yeah, I'll pull it up on Instagram unless you have it. If I could talk like her with a lot of lip smacking.
Okay.
I love driving by construction sites and seeing all the men doing the heavy, backbreaking work with not a woman in sight. I love the differences between men and women, masculine and feminine, because God is good and his plan for us is good.
I mean, the first part could be like a gay thirst tweet.
I've been watching a lot of Golden Girls lately, and this is just like a Blanche quote. Like this is like she just goes on these tangents about these sexy men, and I'm like, that's Lori.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she went to talk about the Simpsons again. The steel workers and they go to when the Homer thinks Bart is gay and he takes him to a gay steel mill by accident.
Yes.
It's just like not a woman in sight.
Oh man, yeah, Lori's she's something.
Yeah.
Can we ask her if looking at these construction workers doing backbreaking labor was equivalent to cleaning a toilet like a gross chore you don't want to do?
That
someone
would break her.
So I thought maybe we could end this episode with my absolute new favorite Lori tweet.
Oh God.
So this one is, let me see, does it have a date on it? It might not. Yeah, this is from this year. This is from January of 2023. And this is maybe a fun note to end on. Lori says, just met a 23-year-old woman. Begin sharing how much I love being a wife, mother, and grandmother, and how the workforce never appealed to me. Explained how women weren't created for the workforce. I asked if she had a man in her life. She told me she has a girlfriend that she likes. Then it's got a sad face and a broken
crying
heart emoji.
Heartbreak emoji.
Yes.
Shouts out to the 23-year-old lesbian or bisexual or pansexual young woman that got to flex on Lori Alexander in the supermarket.
I bet it was Target.
You are our hero.
No, like the thing is, like Lori Alexander, all of her tweets have a very strong, ma'am, this is a Wendy's vibe. Like, oh man.
I feel like whoever that person was, they are all of our hero today because they got to flex on Lori.
My God, man, I can't imagine. Like, imagine if you met Lori Alexander in real life and she was like, I met this young mother and she had aquamarine hair and it breaks my heart. Like, can you imagine? Like,
I really would be so interested to see what she would say because I have so many things about me that she would just violently, I'm going to try that again because I can't pronounce that word right today. There are so many things about me that she would just so violently disapprove of. Got tattoos and fun colored hair. Right now I'm wearing a shirt from a metal band. But also I'm a stay-at-home mother. I take care of my child.
You don't work outside the home, Sadie.
I do not.
You do not work outside the home.
I mean, last week I did for a day because I worked at somebody else's house with my kid. But I would love to have the opportunity one day to attempt to break her brain.
Yeah, I wonder if that person was just saying as I would. I don't know. You have if you have one shot to say something to Lori and like end up on her Twitter, you take it. What would you say?
See, I think my tactic would be looking like I look, but trying to show her all of the things that she would approve of.
Mm.
And just to see the cognitive dissonance or see how she spins that to fit her narrative.
Or start spouting off Bible verses to try to, confuse her.
So I was at a friend's house about an hour away from where I live last Saturday, and IFB Soul Winners came knocking on the door.
Oh,
and they left before I could get to the door, and I was so mad because I was wearing like ripped jeans and a t-shirt, and I have my blue hair and everything, and I really wanted to answer the door and start quoting scripture at them and see what happened.
You could have taken them through the whole plan of salvation, man.
I know. I'm so sad I didn't get that opportunity.
Like, no, do come in. Come on.
if you saw, if Lori Alexander saw you, what is the thing that she would be most most horrified and appalled by?
I don't know. I have the trifecta. I have pink hair, tattoos, and I'm overweight. Like, she would have a field day.
J-Rod too.
Right.
J-Rod. No, see, the thing that I think I would get is because I have a nose piercing. I think that she would see me and she would assume that I was gay or bisexual because I have a nose piercing. And she would just say, I saw a man walking down the street and he had a nose piercing, and it just broke my heart that this man wasn't doing manual labor and he wasn't a firefighter.
Now, if he was a firefighter, I'd like to imagine what he would look like without because she's so horny.
Yeah. No, it's
for everybody
true.
except for her husband.
R.I.P.
Like, I moved from Portland to Philly, and like in Portland, I have a nose piercing and I have a couple of ear piercings, and that's just like regular straight dude. But like here in Philly, I get asked if I'm bisexual on a regular basis. But I just assume that Lori Alexander would see me and she would just immediately look at me and she'd just be like, that man, there's something.
Yeah, we don't even make it to conversation before she's already condemned us to hell.
Yeah, I mean, and then she would find out that, and then I would tell her that I'm Jewish, and so then I see that's the thing. I wonder what does she doesn't tweet about the Jews, and that's what kind of disappoints me a little bit. Is because I feel like she would have a lot of really spicy opinions about the Jews, and we would make fun of her.
Right, because there's some fundies that are like super anti-Jewish, and then there are others that like are weirdly fetishist about it. I want to know where she falls.
I don't know if she's like if she's like a Daily Wire type Fundie or if she's like a Steven Anderson type Fundie. That's the thing. Like, does she like us, or does she think that like we're required to fulfill her destiny of Book of Revelations, or does she think that we're the cause of all of the wars in the world? Like, that's the question there. I gotta know, and I'm kind of curious about where Lori Alexander falls on this thing.
Let's bring her on.
Let's bring her on. You know what? That's why we need a Lori Alexander cameo. Lori Alexander, if you're not on Cameo yet, you got to get on Cameo, because I feel like a lot of people would be buying a cameo from Lori Alexander just to show off how
just to see what they get.
Yeah, just
it's
to be like
the
as
get
big
what you get tattoo machines. I don't know if you've seen one of those.
Wow.
Like, they do like Plinko. But Lori cameos.
There's a get what you get tattoo machine.
Yeah, there's like several of them in Portland. It's like a gumball machine, and you put your quarter in, and then the little like plastic Easter egg thing comes out the bottom, and whatever design is in that's what you get tattooed.
Are they good designs? Like, where is
they're
it?
they're like super classic designs. On that note, I do think it's probably time to wrap up this episode. I don't really have any final thoughts on Lori. I think I got it all out. Jen, do you have any final thoughts or anything that you didn't get to say you wanted to say?
No.
No. See, my brain is also mush. This has been enough, Lori, for me for a while.
Yeah, she's the final boss of Facebook racists, you know? Like, she's just...
Yeah, and that's why I think like the correct response is kind of to poke fun at her, because the things that she's saying are just so blatantly awful. And I think that engaging with her seriously is too much of what she wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more fun to just get on a call with your old friend and your new friend and just talk about her. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for giving us your time and being on here with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Oh my gosh, this was incredibly fun, and I hope we get to hang out at some point again and talk about fundies.
Absolutely.
If you're not following Jen and you like Fundie Snark, what are you even doing?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, Jen is the leader of the Fundie Snarking movement.
Would you like to plug all of your social media, anything that you have that you'd like to plug?
I got Patreon, Instagram, TikTok. I have a Goodreads. A lot of people ask me how I keep track of the books I read. It's on Goodreads.
And those are all Fundie Fridays or some permeation of the above.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram and on TikTok at Leaving Eden Podcast. Please interact with our TikToks because we've been shadow banned from the platform and it won't promote our videos or anything at all. It's really annoying. And we're trying to get the word out about the show, and I've been making hella clips, putting hella work into that. Please go interact with our videos so that the algorithm will like us better. Thank you. You can join our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Eden Exodus. You can join our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/Eden Exodus.
I'm sub to the subreddit.
The subreddit is good. It's fun. It's a great time. You can join our Patreon, patreon.com/Leaving Eden Podcast, where there will undoubtedly be an extended version of today's episode where we said a lot of stuff that we do not want to be on public record saying, that if you give us money, you can hear us say it. Sadie, plug your socials.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at HellYesSadie. You can follow me on Instagram at Sadie Carpenter Music and on TikTok at Sadie Carpenter1.
And you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GAVRIELHACOHEN. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Sadie, what are we talking about next week?
Oh, it's the Pastor School episode. Next week, I am telling a brand new trauma story that I don't believe I've told on this podcast before. The funny kind.
Yay! Sadie triggers herself. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
But old rolling river of time healed me into many days. No regrets, no confusion, there'll be no pollution. I'm so thankful I've decided to change my ways. I'm so thankful I decided